It was a drawing portraying a worn, weary, burdened Jesus out in the barren desert, weak with hunger, mercilessly tempted by the enemy of souls. The biblical account found in Luke chapter 4 brings to life the intensity of the no-holds-barred struggle. We, of course, identify and resonate in our humanity to the areas of temptation. And as if we were watching a gospel thriller, we cheer every move and brave response of the battered but unyielding hero. With joy, we celebrate the victory of the Master and the fact the devil stepped up to the plate 3 times and, in the language of baseball, struck out. As I left the scriptural narrative with a sharpened sensitivity to the devices and deceits of the enemy, as well as the secret of successful overcoming by the word, I did so not quite alert to the ominous import of the sentence that follows hard on the heels of the magnificent overcoming. In the 13th verse of Luke 4, "Now when the devil had ended every temptation, he departed from him until an opportune time," or departed with a resolution to attack him again. It's as if the enemy leaves, muttering, regardless of what happened this time, it's not over. This is not the end of it. The battle is still on. That phrase, "a more opportune time," and its disturbing truth began to consume my mind. An opportune time for the enemy is a vulnerable time for us, a time when situation and circumstance enhance the likelihood of his success. And as David Jeremias reminds us, why is it opportunity knocks once, but it seems like temptation is at my door every day? The thought dominated my mind, when is that more convenient time? I need to know. Is it when I'm tired, idle, bored, weakened, despondent? From the perspective I had in my youthful days, surely that convenient time for him is when we have failed or been defeated. The time when everything is going wrong, everything going downhill, you just ahead of the avalanche. The time when you are on the bottom and the best you can do is barely look up. Like an embarrassed, humiliated Peter, dejected, disgusted, lost in his discouragement and defeat, a professional fisherman who toiled all night and caught nothing. Or like me, early in my ministry in Terre Haute, Indiana, after a disastrous sermon, my ego battered by wave after wave of painful doubts that were almost drowning my conviction of call. As I relive it, certainly that can be the enemy's opportune time. But as I got a little older and hopefully wiser, I came to recognize, as I'm sure you know, that more convenient time for the enemy, rather than a time of defeat, can be a time of triumph. When your efforts have succeeded beyond your expectations, when you are at the top of your game, when perceptive people with appreciation for exceptional talent are singing your praises, as they sang David's, the giant killer, who learned the hard way, the giants keep coming. For if one comes to lose sight of his entire dependence on God and to trust to his own strength, he is sure to fall. But then again, maybe an opportune time for the enemy could be when Moses was seemingly forgotten, forlorn, and forsaken in the desert for 40 years. The truth is, the eroding ritual of the routine can be difficult and demanding. It's harder to live the Christian life little by little over the long haul in the desert of the daily. I think of Mother Teresa, ministering to those often left by others to die. I think of the press coverage on Mother Teresa's long, dark night of the soul, as she wrote with weary familiarity of an arid landscape from which seemingly the deity had disappeared. Is that the more convenient time? Or is it the senior years, when the reality of age rudely intrudes into your personal fantasy land? When the temporary exuberance of youth has surrendered to the inexorable advance of old age with its cynicism, if not possible disillusionment? When the fumes of yesterday's zeal and vision may be all that is left in an empty spiritual tank? As I sought through all that, I arrived at the inescapable conclusion. To know that opportune time might be helpful, but what you and I really need to know beyond the shadow of a doubt is not the when. The focus of our attention ought to be whenever the enemy's opportune time, despondency, sickness, failure, waning stages of life, whenever the victorious Savior is there. There, as with Peter in his failure. Launch out into the deep and try it again. There, as with a fallen David, who, awed by God's mercy and forgiveness, wrote in Psalm 32, "Happy is the person whose sins are forgiven, whose wrongs are pardoned." There, as with Moses, when the divine disrupted the desert of the daily, inviting him to a holy ground experience, the victorious Savior is there, as with you and me. In the words of Carol Cimbala, when my strength was all gone, when my heart had no song, still in love, he's proved faithful to me. When my heart looked away the many times I could not pray, still my God was faithful to me. Every word he's promised is true. What I thought was impossible, I've seen my God do. He's been faithful, faithful to me. Looking back, His love and mercy I see, though in my heart I have questioned and failed to believe. He's been faithful, faithful to me.